Intro then. Okay, so welcome everybody and those who are still signing on. I am Amy Beckier, San Diego Chapter Director. This is being co-hosted by myself, by Sue Drescher, who's the Chapter Director of the Bay Area, and James Rice, who's the Chapter Director of LA. So before we do begin, I have two announcements. I'm excited to tell you that the early bird discount pricing for the in-person registration for the June 17th to 19th FSHD Society Patient Connect Conference in Orlando for a $195 discount has been extended until next Friday, 5/20. So if you haven't registered and you still are intending on going, you can take advantage of the discount. There is a discount code. What I'll do afterwards while Kent begins the conversation is I'll post that link and the discount code in the chat column so that you can then pull up that. And I do believe we've all received an email on it, but I'll post it again. I urge you, if you can go, to seriously think about going. Not only will you hear dynamic speakers and the latest scientific information, but you and your family will be spending time with other FSHers and their families. I always return feeling recharged and uplifted by the amazing group of people who I'm blessed to call my friends. If you cannot go, there is registration for online virtual, which has been done really, really well. And you can then view the scientific speakers, but of course you'll miss the dynamics of the in-person. But I do urge you to consider one or the other. Also, please go to the FSHD Society webpage. There's an incredible amount of information available on there. A lot of times I see questions coming up that are on there with all the information in depth. You can save yourself a lot of research time by just going to that website and finding out myriads of documents, data, information, and advice. Register with the FSHD Society if you or your family members, including non-affected family members, if you have not already done so. Your participation is crucial for us to have your information for the clinical trials that are coming up, and participation in those clinical trials will mean their success. Even if it turns out that you're not trial eligible, there are many, many ways to participate. So don't feel that if you're either aged out or have comorbidities that you cannot help. You can. For instance, I am assisting currently in the beta testing for a new network of genetic DNA tests and counseling. There are surveys, there are questionnaires that are invaluable for further research. So everyone, all of you, we need you all. So those are the two announcements I wanted to make before we begin today. And now I'd like to introduce Kent Drescher and his colleague, Dr. Robyn Walser, who will be talking about acceptance commitments therapy, also known as ACT, and its application for coping with FSHD. Kent is an FSHD patient. As a graduate of the Fuller Graduate School of Psychology, he is considered an expert in the intersection of trauma, spirituality, and ACT. ACT has been shown to be effective when used with trauma patients and returning vets struggling with PTSD. We are FSHD warriors. I was fascinated to hear about the recent studies that Ken discussed in part 1 of this series about successfully utilizing ACT to help FSHD patients cope with the constantly progressing and ongoing day-to-day difficulties of FSHD. Today, Kent and Robyn will role play and discuss your comments and questions from both sessions. This is only an introduction to ACT and the possibility of training yourself to be more psychologically flexible and resilient. We are recording and uploading this series for our FSHD YouTube channel. The entire series will be there for you to listen to and to recommend to friends and family. If you have questions or comments, please write them in the chat box so that Ken and Robyn can incorporate them into the discussion. And I would like to mention that anybody who is not speaking, please put yourself on mute. I hear some noise right now in the background. It becomes very, very disturbing and loud and can interfere with the recording for future. If you have questions or comments, please write them in the chat box, and Kent and Robyn will incorporate them into the discussion. And now I will relinquish the spotlight to allow Kent to introduce Dr. Robyn Walser, whom we are so grateful and honored to have here today. Welcome, Dr. Walser and Kent. I'm turning it over to you now.
Okay, well, thank you, Amy. It's really an honor for me to be able to introduce Robyn. Robyn is a good friend. She and I worked together at the National Center for PTSD for more than 20 years until I retired. Robyn is still there part-time, but she does a tremendous amount of travel and training in ACT internationally. She's highly sought out as a speaker and a presenter. She also has her own private clinical practice and does a lot of clinical supervision with other clinicians. So we're really lucky that she's taken time out of her busy schedule to spend some time with us. All right. I just wanted to review 2 slides. We talked last time about resilience and thinking about resilience as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. It's the ability to spring back into shape, to be flexible. And one of the factors in research that has been supported in terms of enhancing resilience is what is called psychological flexibility. And that is really the cornerstone of acceptance and commitment therapy. Is as a therapy, it's not necessarily focused on trying to eliminate symptoms of a psychological disorder. Rather, it's really designed to make people more flexible in the way that they live and interact, both outside of their bodies and inside of their bodies and with their minds. And so that's really what we're talking about when we talk about acceptance and a commitment therapy. Last time I did a lot of presenting with PowerPoint slides, and we're not going to do that today. There's a lot of stigma in our country around mental health. Many people are highly reticent to think about going to see a counselor or anything that has to do with mental health. There's also a tremendous amount of stigma around disability. And all of us, as we grow up in this society, have picked up on those stigmas and internalized them to some degree or another. And so rather than talking about ACT, I thought that it would be appropriate and helpful maybe to demonstrate ACT. And so Robyn and I have done this before using like imaginary cases. I've been filmed as her client a couple of times. But I thought it'd be more helpful actually to make this a little closer to home. And so Robyn and I are going to drop into 3 different vignettes that are actually real for me and are themes that were mentioned in the chat box last time by other people, related to what are their struggles with resilience as it relates to FSHD. And so the 3 issues that we're hoping to kind of illustrate just briefly. First is the struggle with pain and fatigue. The second is having to do with thoughts and feelings about disability and our self-perceptions. And then the third being kind of managing worries about the future, about what's going to happen with my disease, how's it going to affect me, what's it going to mean for my life. So we are going to spend maybe 5 minutes with each of these, just kind of trying to demonstrate some of the core processes that are a part of acceptance commitment therapy. And then we're going to open it up for questions and dialogue, and see where we can go from there. Okay. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And maybe we, Robyn, can you spotlight us again?
That wasn't me who did it. I don't have hosting
Okay.
ability. Somebody else
Lee,
spotlight.
are you still there?
Yeah, I'm taking care of it right now. Give me 1 second. There we go.
Okay.
I need 1 second to rearrange my screen. Oh, are we still spotlighted?
Yep.
Okay, I got it. Thank you for inviting me here today, Kent, and it's nice to see all of you here. I hope you're doing well, and thanks for giving up some of your time on a Sunday to come and check this out.
Thank you for giving some of your time on a Sunday also, Robyn. So Robyn, I wanted to talk about, you know that when COVID started, I had some health problems emerge, and I worked on a weight loss program, an exercise program, and that went quite well. But one of the consequences, it seems like, has been some physical changes, probably related to loss of muscle. And I've been experiencing quite a bit of chronic pain and fatigue. And it just, it's just wears on me. You know, I've tried a number of things. I don't want to get involved with heavy medications, you know, so I'm just doing the kind of take Tylenol one. But it seems like it's really become limiting in my activities and whatnot.
I'm trying to imagine, Kent, that how disappointing it must have been to lose all of that weight, right, and help yourself get back in shape, and then find yourself in a place where you're now in pain and maybe more connected to some muscle loss and feeling tired. You'd think that after you lose the weight, right, that you would now have more energy and not feel pain and tiredness.
Well, and so there are things that are better. You know, I'm able to get up off of the floor more easily than if I fall, than I could before. And I'm able to exercise in ways that I couldn't, but it seems like there's just been this corresponding increase in pain in mostly in my lower back, but some also in my shoulders and different places. And it's chronic. It you know, it affects me when I try to go to sleep, if I have to roll over at all, trying to get up from bed. And it almost feels like the only place where I'm really comfortable is sitting, which is not the thing
Yeah.
that's ideal. But it's just that frustration of feeling stuck.
Well, so there's one thing that you're pointing to. Actually, there's many things that you're pointing to here that I think are sometimes hard to remember when we're feeling kind of tuned in and captured by the pain and the fatigue. And what I mean by captured is that it's weighing on you, right? Like you end up thinking about it a fair bit. But you made some comments that I think are really important to also be aware of, and that's that there are other things happening. I can get up easier. I can move a little bit more. And then there's this other sense of you, right? I'm in pain when I'm in bed, but then I can also sit. And I guess part of what I want to draw your attention to is these kind of multiple aspects of you that are not simply pain or fatigue, right? And just as you're talking about it, you can see that there's more to you than those two things, pain and fatigue. But when they're present and they're chronic, I think was the word that you used, we tend to get captured by it. Does that make sense to you, what I mean by captured by it?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, when I'm aware of the pain, it sort of occupies
Yeah.
all my inner space.
And you sort of get in this place of how long is this kind of pain going to last, and why did this happen to me, and how come I can't figure out how to solve it, right? And so you're spending your time inside the pain and then feeling worn out by it. And what happens, well, is two things, is that you lose the moment, what's here and now and present for me, and the broader sense of you, that there's more to you than pain and fatigue. That if I started asking you questions about yourself and about how you show up with your family, how you show up with the FSHD community, how you show up at the job that you're doing, right? There's other aspects to you that feel like they're more than pain and fatigue.
Yeah, although I think sometimes I make choices that and not engage in those things because I don't want to have to deal with the pain, or my energy is so low I can't see myself getting up and going to the store or going wherever it is
Yeah.
I want to go.
I mean, that would make sense to me, right? It sort of sounds protective in a way, like I'm gonna take care of myself here, or I'm gonna might have that quality to it. It might have another quality to it, a quality of giving up, if that makes sense. Or if it's frustrating, it might have a quality of just like, screw this, right? Like, I'm not going to bother. Do any of those fit for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It just sometimes it just feels like, what's the point of, the disease is just going to get worse, so what's the point of struggling?
Well, and as you know, Kent, that's one of my favorite questions for people to ask is, what is the point? And what is the point? What is the point of getting up and going? And what is the point of showing up to your family and the job and the things that you do, right? Like, what is the larger sort of you that's not defined by FSHD, the you that's not defined by your pain or your fatigue? You're aware of those things, but you're not defined by them. Like a you that wants something in life.
Well, yeah, I mean, I care about my family and my kids and grandkids, and being with them is amazing and special. Um, but there's things I know that I should be doing, and it would help. I mean, the research says that exercise is actually helps reduce fatigue. It seems counterintuitive. My mind also says I don't feel like I'm too tired.
Yeah.
But it's just easier to not engage, to just sit in the chair. Because it's an effort, it's painful to stand up and actually get up and do it.
So your mind wins, right?
Yeah.
So
Usually,
I'm gonna share with you something about this that I think a lot of people kind of fall into this place where mind wins because it seems powerful and it is protective, right? It wants to keep you safe, but it acts like it's in charge when it isn't. And so I'm just going to draw this little image. I know you've seen this before, but just as a reminder, and I'll share it with you. Just take me a little second. By the way, I'm not a good artist, so be prepared. So you know that the research says that going to exercise will reduce fatigue, and there's actually research that shows that it can reduce pain as well, right? Like it has that, and that it might create something, just a little space. And I think part of moving towards that space involves remembering that you're more than your pain and your fatigue. There's a you there that's more than that. And so one of the things that I like to share with folks is this little image here. And if this is you, and this is your mind, and this is also you, and this is your mind, I'm wondering who's walking who. If this is a leash and you're taking your mind for a walk, hopefully you guys can connect to my little images here. If your direction is toward caring and being present to your family, then doing things that your mind doesn't want to do is going to be part of that. When your mind says, I don't want to, I don't feel like it, I'm in too much pain, then the question is, who's walking who? Are you walking your mind, or is your mind walking you? And both of these are helpful. Both of those places are good places to be, except when you get into your mind walking you and it stops you from doing those things that are related to what's the point.
Robyn, maybe this would be a good place to stop and see if people have questions and thoughts.
Sure.
Okay. There looks like a couple of questions in the chat.
Do you want to read them, or?
Is there anyone that has a particular question that they'd like to ask? If so, go ahead and unmute and ask it. Raise your hand.
I would like to respond to Colette.
Okay.
Colette says, I can get exercise and I don't feel tired or pain, but if I do too much, I'm in bed sleeping the next day. I do think there is a tension here. I mean, I'm sort of suggesting that to not always let your mind be in charge of what you do, because it will hold you back and keep you stuck, as you said. Like, I get stuck in, how long is this going to last? This is horrible, right? And then kind of giving up or letting go in some way that's not healthy. And I think there is a tension. You need to titrate and balance and be curious and test and do more, do less, right? As you sort of look at what is working. I suppose the main thing is that if your mind grabs you and you stay in that place where you just listen to your mind all the time, you probably won't be exercising at all.
I'd like to say something, if I may. This is Amy Beckier. It's not, for me, I don't feel that so much is who's walking whom, whether it's my mind or my body leading. It's that, and I think we discussed this in part 1 too. It's that I'm finding that with the pain and fatigue being so overwhelming, that it's usurping my executive functions. I can't think straight. I'm just focusing so much on trying to get from point A to point B without landing on the floor. Where's my body? Where are my legs? How am I balanced? Am I holding on correctly? Did I turn too quickly? That it literally is taking everything away from my thought process, so that I'm having executive function issues as far as dealing with anything else. So it's not so much the pain leading me. It's that it's not allowing me to function.
And Amy, I agree with that. I don't have probably quite the struggle with pain that you do. But I'm very aware, for instance, if I'm walking out and about, I can't talk to other people. I can't think about something else. My whole focus needs to be on where my foot's going next, to make sure that I don't fall. And so, yeah, I agree that, and that's appropriate. That's probably how I should be walking, because doing it any other way is not safe.
So this reminds me, this is part of a research study that we did. One of the things
We
that,
can't hear Sue, so it's,
Let me just mute and I'll let her talk.
okay, can you hear me now? Okay. Sorry, we're in the same room. Okay, sorry, we're in the same room, so we have to mute one or the other, sorry. Kent was in a study last year up at University of Reno, and it's a gait study where you walk on a computerized floor that measures your steps and different things. And one of the tests this reminds me of was during that walking, they started to ask math questions, like simple count backwards and then subtraction, and just watching Kent try and even stop and think about that and walk at the same time was part of the study. And you just point to that, Amy, about, it's 24/7. Am I upright? Am I vertical? Am I walking? Am I falling down? And how much that means is a huge thing. And that is what the brain is doing, just to be mobile and not be able to have to think or talk about anything else, like Kent said, have a conversation or anything. So I think everybody is having that experience, or possibly part of that in one way or another with FSH.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even just walking. It's if somebody is wheelchair bound and given that up because it's just too much for them, and they can't enjoy life. So wheelchair sometimes is a better alternative. Even transferring from the wheelchair to the bed, or the wheelchair to the toilet, or pulling up your clothing, or getting on your clothing, or brushing your teeth, or even readjusting your eyeglasses. I mean, the effort for the minutest of things just completely usurps all else. So I don't think it really is fair just to talk about whether we're leading our mind is leading our body, or our body's leading our mind here. I don't think we had that choice.
Do you mind if I respond?
Please.
So, of course, this is not about dismissing in any way that struggle that Amy is talking about. Like, that is a real thing. And hopefully in showing something like what I showed, no one would take the message away that this is about dismissing that struggle. But rather, why would you engage in that struggle is part of what I'm working with in speaking with Kent. And so I want to be as respectful as possible to Kent and be aware to this question of why live, why move, why do anything. And it's a good question. What is the point of this kind of life? And what I want to answer, I want Ken to answer that question. Why would you engage in these things when it's so difficult and so hard and so challenging and overwhelming? And I hear Kent saying, because I care about my family and I care about, you know, how I'm going to spend the rest of my life. So this is a matter of meaning and purpose, not a matter of dismissal, if that makes sense. And I noticed that Colette has had her hand up for a while. You're muted, Colette.
I just had a comment, really. I think I've struggled with getting a handle on the disease and the progression of the disease, and just how much I'm still capable of doing. I think sometimes your mind, you're a bit fearful. Okay, I may not do this because I might fall. I may not do this because I'm going to hurt the next day. In the beginning, I tried to prove that wrong. Since I was so active, I would just push through. And I did that a lot. And while I was doing it, I know that exercise makes a difference in your well-being and in how you feel, because I was an athlete. And those endorphins kick in and I felt great. But after I was diagnosed, that's been 5 years now, pain and fatigue is major. And I still have not found that balance. But I do feel that you're onto something here about talking about we're more than that. We're more than the disease. How can we live with it and still feel like we have purpose, like we have a goal or two that we're going to try and see if we can at least have it too, have it alongside what we're struggling with. And that's kind of what I've been working on. I can't exercise to the level I did before, but I try to scientifically figure out how much exercise I can do in a day and stop and then see what I feel like the next day. Then I know at least that I can do X amount and I'll be okay. And I cannot combine that with housework or with, grocery delivery or, I used to do so much and I can't do that. And so that's my comment.
No, that's helpful, Colleen. And we're sort of circling around this idea of finding that balance place and figuring out what's important to us. What are the things that matter enough for it to be worth pushing the limits of that balance point, engaging in things, finding ways to engage in things that we used to do one way that maybe now we have to do a different way, but still work in the same direction. Robyn, why don't we try one more little sort of vignette, and I'll just kind of pick up again. So another thing that I've noticed physically is, and it seems to be related again to losing some muscle, the weight loss, is I'm having a difficult time standing upright. And I've been fairly proactive about that. I bugged my doctor and waited for a month, and they got me a rollator because I said it would be helpful for me to be able to do some walking or something to keep me upright. Because without that, I'm not walking much. If I go out, I'll take the wheelchair or do something else. And so I got the rollator now like a month ago, and I've had it out twice. And my head, at one level, I know this is important. I want to do this. Needs to be something, even if it's 5 minutes, that I get out every day and just walk. I haven't done it, and I think there's another voice in my head that doesn't feel comfortable being seen. I remember years ago when I started falling first, my doctor prescribed AFOs, leg braces, and I wouldn't do the prescription. I waited 7 years before it became desperate enough that I decided I needed to do that. And I don't know exactly what it's about, but I think it's about how it feels to appear disabled. And to walk my neighborhood with a walker just feels, whether it's unmanly or I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think that, when I think about what we've learned socially about how people should be and what they should look like and what the rules for normalcy are, I think it puts you in a position where, I'm falling outside of that, right? Like it's been defined across your lifetime and you're falling outside of that. And what minds do is compare. That's part of their job, like compare this and that and evaluate. Is this good? Is this bad? And sometimes they're really good at it and they're doing just the right job, you know. They'll do things like dark alley at midnight, don't go there, I need to stay safe. That's probably a good thing when mind is doing that business. But minds also can turn against us in ways that are not helpful. I'm not saying minds are good or bad, they're sort of like in between. They're sort of like frenemies, if folks know that term, right? They can be both good and bad, and the places where they are bad is when they get us stuck in social ideas about norms, what's normal. And I kind of want to like reach out and diffuse, see that this was learned by you a long time ago about what's okay to look like when you're out there in the world, and recognize it for what it is, but not let it interfere with what you care about, with what it is that you want to do. So it's like opening up to that experience of what are other people going to think of me, and simply letting it be what it is as you walk, so that you're both open and moving, but in ways that matter to you, right? Like you get to determine this. You get to, you know how much you can do, and of course it's experimentation, like everybody's mentioning here, and sometimes it's too much, and you have to take a day off or two, and it's challenging work. It takes you more to do than what quote normal people would do, right? But I would hate to see you not walk because of social ideas about what's okay.
I know that stuff in my head, but it still feels uncomfortable when I'm walking.
Yeah.
It's like I can see there's nobody even on the street, and it still feels like they're looking behind the curtain to,
Yeah. So I guess the question that I would ask is, would you be willing to feel that discomfort in the service of your health? Feelings of discomfort are not anything more than that. Now, I'm not talking about physical here. I'm talking about that emotional discomfort place. It has a loud voice sometimes, and that loud voice can keep us inside of our homes, not as a physical process, but as a mental process. And I guess part of what I want to encourage is a place where you're not fused with that idea, that becomes the reason you don't live the life you want to live, mentally speaking.
Do you have a magic switch to turn that off?
I do not have a magic switch. Like, if I ask everybody here to not have a thought right now, just don't have a thought, probably no one is able to do that, because minds are thought machines. That's their job. They just, produce one thought after another. Just like circulating blood, there's circulating thoughts, and we can spend our whole time living here, or we can see that this is what minds do, and observe our minds and notice that they don't stop thinking, and show up to ourselves as like sunsets and experiencers rather than math problems. Your discomfort doesn't need to be solved in order for you to take a step outside the house.
That would be a good stopping point. We're almost
I can see that Michelle has a question if we're going to stop here.
Michelle?
Yeah, just listening to all of that, I think, okay, yes, I'm totally relating to everything that Kent is saying. And I know that when you came to visit at one time, Kent, you looked at my fabulous rollator and like, I'm not going to use that to go inside. And I totally saw that. And it's interesting because I remember the first time I was going to use a cane, and I was going back to Australia for a visit, and I thought I was just going to die to go back there walking with this cane and have this reunion with, a bunch of school friends. And it was that moment that it was like, oh God, here I go. But I realized that once I had done it, that was that. And how much do people really care? I don't know why we worry so much about what everyone else thinks, but it's become really obvious to me that most people are so wound up in themselves and what they're doing that, it might be something interesting for a couple of minutes and then, that's it. So going from the cane to the scooter to, the rollator to walk around, I now just think, well, and having, a funny walk and all of those things, it's loss. And then if, we can just try to have that acceptance. I know that every single day I'm also fighting, internally, like I am so frustrated because I can't do that thing. And I'm trying to explain to somebody else, no, you don't do it like that. You take that over there. And generally my husband, and I end up yelling and screaming that, that's not the way I want it done, because it's not the way I would do it. It's not good enough. And now it's like, okay, if I can just calm down a little bit and say, it's not going to be done the same way, it's going to be done a different way, and that's going to be okay. But I have to still have that conversation at least 50 times a day. So yeah, I mean, that's just my little sort of adding to this dilemma that we have.
Absolutely. Thank you. Other questions? Amy?
As Michelle was talking, I didn't even know my hand was up. What occurred to me is maybe you can address before we close this session, talking about fear of the unknown, fear of falling, fear of not being able to take care of ourselves. Maybe you can address that.
Would you like me to answer that, Kent?
Yeah, go ahead, Robyn.
Okay. I guess one of the things that I want to do is answer the question with full humility, right? Because going through something like FSHD and watching Kent go through it, I very much can connect to the sadness of the loss and the struggle. And I could never know it from the inside out. But for all of you, what I would hope is that meaning stays alive and purpose inside of this terrible place, right, of losing. And what you end up getting to is things like love and connection and authenticity. Those are the things that sort of feel left, if that makes sense to folks, when your bodies begin to have what happens to them happening to them. And so when I think about fear, there's fear about uncertainty, the unknown. How long is this going to last? What is this going to look like? What's going to happen to me? What's going to go first? Like, there's all of the uncertainty inside of this disease, and we could be fearful over that uncertainty. And I guess as you, as a being that is more than your disease, what I would also hope for is, aside from continuing to have meaning in your life, is that you could make room for that fear in such a way that it was no longer a barrier to moving towards meaning. Now, I know you've got to gauge things, and you've got to experiment. You've got to, like, go a little bit and then come back, and go a little bit more and come back. And, like, you've got to work with people around you and make adaptations. Like, all of that is part of it. But that the fear wouldn't become the thing that's living your life for you. That rather, you're living your life for meaning. And that the fear is just going to come along. It's going to be part of it. It's not your enemy. Fear is not your enemy, and it's just telling you that you care and you want it to be okay. It's a fearful space to lose your body, to watch yourself physically disappear. And so the way I talk about it is to hold and move. And that movement doesn't have to be physical movement. It's movement towards meaning and what you care about in your life. I don't know if you would add to that, Kent, in terms of what I'm sharing.
No, I think you're right on it. I think if I were to say anything, it's that one of the challenges is that it's not static. The balance point that worked yesterday may not work anymore going forward, and you have to find a new sort of balance point. So there's certainly always things, fear is going to be a part of that experience because it's unknown. And It's frightening because we're not sure we can adapt, that we're not sure what it will mean for our lived experience if certain things change. But I think I resonate a lot with what you're saying in that we can also connect with the aspects of our lives that matter most to us and find ways to live and experience those things, even though how we do that may have to change. But the values, the things that are important continue.
Well, and it sort of brings us back to where you started, Kent, with what is this idea of resilience and flexibility. And so, we're not talking about physical matters here in some ways, right? We're talking about what is my psychological flexibility. If what was there yesterday is now gone today, there's another loss, right? So there's fear and sadness inside of that. And then will the resilience kick in? And I think that, in those moments it's hard, but it can if you stay curious and keep that meaning out in front of you, that purpose out in front of you, is part of the reason why to keep engaging in things that feel difficult and challenging.
Well, and I think my experience has been that engaging in those things that matter brings something besides the fear into my experience. It feels useful, and it confronts the little voice in my head that says, yeah, well, you're not worth anything anymore because you don't have the physical capabilities that you should have. But doing something that matters pushes that all aside. It makes it untrue. That's I think what's been really important. We're almost out of time. Are there any other questions?
I have a question. Kent, when are you going around the block on your rollator?
See, I hate when I do that. Open myself up, be vulnerable.
Well, I challenge you to do that later on today. It's a beautiful day.
We're just being your accountability partners, Kent. That's all.
Exactly.
On a more serious note, is there any more research being done on fatigue and FSHD? I only read a qualitative study online about, how participants in that study felt about fatigue, but I think fatigue is right up there with this disease.
Yeah, no, it's probably one of the two top symptoms that patients report, along with pain.
Yeah. So I'm just curious if you've heard anything.
So there have been 2 randomized controlled trials that have shown that cognitive behavioral therapy not only helps people become more physically active, but that it also reduces fatigue. And that's a really interesting finding, given that cognitive behavioral therapy is a psychotherapy and doesn't do anything directly physically to the experience of fatigue.
And Kent, that was done with FSHD?
Yes.
Okay.
At least, one of the studies is specific to FSHD. The other
Well,
had.
excuse me, if I understand you right, cognitive behavioral therapy is a form of therapy where you talk about what is happening, and you're more or less changing those patterns of thought. Oh, I am tired. Maybe I'm not tired. Maybe it's something else. Am I saying that right?
I think generally, yes. So acceptance and commitment therapy, it can broadly be considered within the cognitive behavioral therapy family. The CBT that was done for this particular trial was focused on helping people adjust their thinking in ways that lead them to become more engaged physically. And that did lead to reductions in fatigue. And it actually showed more benefits. The control condition, one of the control conditions was an actual just exercise program where they paired people with a trainer, and the trainer got out the lash and said, "You will exercise." And the CBT performed equally well in terms of fatigue reductions, but it had other benefits in terms of enlarging the person's social network and increasing their satisfaction with their lived experience. So anyway, so there is some benefit for psychological processes in terms of addressing the issues. Yeah.
If I may, Kent and Robyn, my personal takeaway here from what I'm hearing this discussion is really cognitively managing changing expectations and how we perceive what we are able to accomplish. And as our body changes, that we need to be flexible in changing those expectations.
So I think there might be some truth in that. We might say it differently. I might say it's about becoming a little bit more willing to have experiences that are unpleasant, like negative emotions, or to kind of let loose, release the grip that some of those thoughts have over my behavior, and take the reins back of my behavior to move in a direction that matters. Is that what do you think, Robyn?
I think that's well said. Fear is no longer the dictator. Your matters, your meaning is what is guiding you, given your context, your situation.
Well, I haven't found that balance yet between.
And I think that balance is moment to moment. There's not a magic balance point. I think it's choosing each moment to look at what's there for me, what matters to me, and how can I take steps in that direction without doing things that are
The
harmful.
fatigue doesn't leave me. Yeah,
I'm sorry?
the fatigue, but the fatigue is still with me, is what I'm saying. And I'm now trying to accept it rather than fight it, if that makes sense, you know? I can't control that aspect because that's part of the disease, but my mind will let me go forth and exercise, you know. I just have to try and figure out a balance, if that makes sense, between too much. I haven't found that.
Yeah, no, and I haven't entirely found that either, because there's multiple reasons for fatigue. You know, some are mental, some are physical, and you know, some have to do with I didn't sleep last night. You know, so figuring out that stuff is a moment to moment thing because it changes.
Thank you.
Well, I wish personally that we had had more time, and we could certainly go on and on and on with this, but I also want to honor Robyn's time. And I know that she has valued activities that she wants to be engaged in going forward in the next moments. So maybe we can just thank her for her time, and anybody that wants to stay on, we can continue to talk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robyn.
Thank you, Robyn.
Thank you all for inviting me and having me here today, and my warmest regards to all of you and what you're living through. All right, Kent, I will talk to you this week, and take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Robyn.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Right. Kent, do you want to stay on a little bit longer for people?
I'm open. If there are continued questions, we can continue with chat.
Okay, Lee, I don't know, do you want to continue recording? Because other questions may come up.
It is still on, so I am happy to let that still, I think it's still recording.
And I'm not forcing anyone to stay on. So if people want to ask questions or just discuss what happened.
Well, as a compliment to you, we still have 19 people on, so we'll go longer and see if we can answer some of those questions. I know Donna Russo, if she's still on, she had her hand up before we ended with Robyn. So if Donna, you're still here and you have a question, Kent is all ears.
Donna, you're still muted. You're muted, Donna.
Oh, okay. When fatigue sets in, it's okay to say, I need to rest. I mean, it's the way I feel. Because then when you take a short rest, you might feel better and not restrict your body, because if you're doing something when you're fatigued or tired, there's more of an injury. There's more of a chance for injury. And it's not a bad thing that you should punish yourself for feeling a bit tired. And then, you know, maybe you regroup and your energy level comes up.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Like I said, there can be many aspects to fatigue. Sometimes fatigue for me is my mind saying, I just don't have the energy to do this. But sometimes I physically just don't, because I've overdone it, maybe that morning or the day before or whatever it might be. And that's realistic. So yeah, no, I think it's moment to moment deciding what's true for your body, and what can you engage in that matters to you in the state that you are right now.
Melanie, you have your hand up. You're on mute.
I do. Hello. I have a question about feeling like I'm losing my identity. Like my identity was active and skiing and dancing and running and walking, and I've lost a lot of those things. And Amy, I know you have too with golf. Golf was huge for you. Like, how do you guys deal with losing your identity?
So I guess one thing I would reflect is that there is a bigger you than the things that sometimes we tie our identity to. So I understand, and I actually empathize quite a lot with that. At one point in my life, I played classical guitar, and that was one of the first things that FSHD took away from me. That was a huge loss, and I had a lot of identity associated with that, to the point where I gave my classical guitar away for 5 years because it was such a painful reminder, that I gave it to a friend who would use it, and eventually I took it back. But for me, it was coming to understand, well, what was at the core of that identity? And for me, part of that, what was underneath that, was the joy of sharing music with people. And I've been able to kind of recover that identity by going to concerts with other people and being able to be around music in a way that way. So I think it's figuring out what are the values that are tied to the activities that you used to be able to do and now can't. And are there ways to express those values, to live those values, in spite of the fact that you can't do those specific activities? That's sort of what it is for me. And I think my identity has shifted to some degree. So I don't know if that's helpful.
It is. It is. Thank you.
And I can say it's not just losing the identity because of FSH. I think this is something that is also tied to a lot of people in retirement. I had a huge identity of being a very high productive insurance agent. And that was very much a part of who I was. And then when I could no longer do that, and whether it was because I retired or because of FSH, it was the same loss of that identity. So I think as we go through life, there's a lot of things that we have to sadly let go of and find new things, new interests, new hobbies, new avocations to get involved with. When I saw that golf was not going to be in my long-term future, I took up painting and became an artist. And now I haven't been able to pick up a paintbrush because I can't hold it to the easel anymore. I haven't given up the thought. I keep thinking about ways of accommodating or modifying, but just finding new identities. In my case, I've gone headlong into the FSHD Society and become the chapter director, and found a purpose and a meaning for myself in doing a lot of that.
And I would venture to say, Amy, that some of the underlying values that were part of your job, helping people feel secure in their lives,
Definitely.
Continue.
Definitely.
We're still caring about people feeling secure with their disease, and you're still active and involved and engaged in that way. And so in that way, your identity hasn't changed. You know, there's that underlying piece that hasn't. Yeah.
Probably true.
Susan?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I hang on because I used to do all of that, you know, water, snow ski and travel, and I hang on to those memories and I cherish those memories and realize that there's a meaning behind what I'm able to do now, and I keep focused on that, searching for what I can do. So that was what I was feeling when Melanie said that.
And I guess I would also reflect, it doesn't mean that there won't be the pain and sorrow of loss
Right.
that comes with that. You know, that's that's real. It's that there may be ways to hold on to that or express that identity in a different way while still having to kind of hold the fact that it's sad.
Yeah,
And that's just a reality.
yeah.
Well,
I guess that'll conclude. I just want to give a shout out to say hello, Craig. Craig is new to San Diego and we've been communicating, but we haven't really seen each other face to face, and he's online today. So I just wanted to give him a shout out. We're going to be having a San Diego chapter meeting in Craig's rec room in his facility in Oceanside in July. So San Diegans, mark your calendars and save the date for July, I believe it's the 16th. It's a Sunday, and I'll be sending out more information on that. So I guess one last call. Does anybody have anything they want to say before we sign off today?
Well, I'd just like to say hello, everybody, and I've enjoyed this, and I can relate to everything that everybody said, and the struggle continues.
Mm-hmm. And it does suck once in a while.
it does.
Yeah. Well, so
At least once a day.
Great. Well, I thank you all for coming and giving up an hour plus of your time on a Sunday, and especially for Kent, Drescher, and Robyn Walser. We really, really appreciate your insights and your expertise on this matter. And this will be up on YouTube. So if you have friends, family members, other affected or non-affected who you think would benefit, make sure to have them take a look at that. I believe, Lee, you'll have a link, right, for the YouTube when it finally gets uploaded to
Give us
look at
a
it.
couple of days to get it set, but then we can
Right.
share that. Yeah.
Great. So thank you all, especially staff, for all you did to help us with this, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.